Today we're going to tackle a huge moment in recent history, the January 6th attack on the US Capitol. But we're not just going to stop there. We're going to put it side by side with Brazil's legal system to see what that comparison tells us about how democracies protect themselves. All right, let's get into it.
First, let's start with a number that really hits home. 5. That's how many people died as a direct result of the attack on January 6, 2021. It's just a chilling reminder of how fast things can spin out of control.
So you might be asking, how did it all kick off? Well, on the morning of the attack, then-President Donald Trump told his supporters at a rally to march to the Capitol. His words were to fight like the devil. And that phrase, well, it became a rallying cry right before the chaos began. So here's our game plan. First, we'll walk through the attack itself. Then, we'll look at how the American justice system responded. After that, we'll jump over to Brazil and its laws for defending democracy, compare the two countries directly, and then wrap it all up with the big takeaways.
Okay, let's dive into part 1, the Capitol attack, a chronicle of an assault on democracy.
The whole thing unfolded with just incredible speed. It started in the morning with that rally, but by early afternoon, the crowd had become a mob marching on the Capitol and just breaking through. From there, it just evolved into violent clashes and vandalism inside Congress. It took until the end of the day for the National Guard to finally help get things back under control.
And the immediate aftermath, it was just staggering. The numbers alone tell a story. 5 dead, 140 police officers hurt, and more than 1,500 people eventually charged. But beyond the stats, the mob got into the actual chambers of the House and Senate, trashed offices, and, this is critical, they stopped the peaceful transfer of power by halting the certification of the election.
So that leads us to our second section. How did the American justice system respond? Let's look at the political and the criminal fallout.
You can really see the response playing out on 3 different levels. At the very top, you had Donald Trump. He was impeached for inciting insurrection, but the Senate acquitted him. Then you have the leaders of extremist groups. They were hit with a much more serious charge, we'll get to that in a sec, and got sentences as long as 22 years. And finally, you have the invaders themselves, with over 600 of them convicted for things like obstruction and assault.
So what is this seditious conspiracy charge? It's a really powerful and pretty rarely used charge in American law. Basically, it's for when people plot to overthrow the government or, and this is the key part here, to stop a federal law from being carried out, like certifying an election by using force. Slapping that charge on group leaders showed just how seriously the Justice Department took this organized effort.
But what about the former president? Well, this is where it gets really tricky. The U.S. Supreme Court has given presidents broad immunity for their official acts while in office, and that legal shield creates a massive hurdle if you want to prosecute them criminally. It's a huge piece of the puzzle for understanding why accountability has been so complex at that top level.
Now this brings us to Section 3, and we're going to pivot to South America, the laws for defending democracy. How is a country like Brazil set up to protect its institutions from a similar kind of threat?
And the timing here is pretty incredible, because in 2021, Brazil made a big move. The country passed a new law that created brand new crimes specifically designed to protect its democratic system. This wasn't just a minor update, it was like a major upgrade to their legal toolbox against anti-democratic attacks.
Okay, let's look at the first new crime. It translates to the violent abolition of the democratic state of law. Now, the most important word here is attempt. You don't actually have to succeed. Just trying to stop the government, like Congress or the courts, from doing its job, using violence or serious threats is a crime. And it carries a sentence of 4 to 8 years.
The second new crime is even more direct, coup d'état. This one specifically goes after any attempt to overthrow a legitimate government with violence. And the penalty is even higher, 4 to 12 years. You see, these laws give Brazilian prosecutors really specific weapons that just don't have a direct equivalent in the U.S. Federal Code.
All right, Section 4. Let's put these two systems head-to-head, USA versus Brazil. And we're going to focus on the biggest difference of all, presidential immunity. And here is where the contrast is just night and day. In the U.S., you've got the Supreme Court providing this broad immunity for a president's official acts, which makes criminal charges really, really tough. But in Brazil, there's no absolute shield like that. Former presidents can and do face criminal charges for their actions, and we've seen proof of that very recently.
Yeah, this isn't just a theory from a law book.
In Brazil, it's actually happening. The Attorney General's office has indicted a former president for crimes including an attempted coup, and the country's Supreme Court has accepted those charges. He's now a defendant. This is a massive, unprecedented step in Brazil, and it's a direct use of those new laws we just talked about.
So, let's wrap this all up in our final section. What do we actually take away from this analysis? Let's talk about the law, politics, and the future of democracy.
So when you boil it all down, what have we learned? Well, first, how a country responds to an attack like this isn't one size fits all. It depends so much on its own legal history. For the U.S., the focus was on punishing the people on the ground, while there were huge legal walls to holding the former president accountable. Brazil, on the other hand, went ahead and created new specific laws to protect itself, and its courts have shown they're willing to use them, even against the most powerful people in the country. And all of this leaves us with one final crucial question. We've seen two totally different legal approaches and two very different results so far. So are laws on their own enough to guarantee a democracy? Or in the end, does it all come down to the political will to enforce those laws no matter who's involved? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us.